Yeah, you mentioned that stat, and that was one of the things that kind of drove me when I moved back from management consulting into basically the startup space 3 years ago was, 10% reach a million in revenue and less than 1% actually get to 10 million in revenue.
Wow.
And, to me, you throw out all the, maybe the solo businesses or side hustles, but it's still a really large number that don't get there. And you've been around this long enough to know it's probably not an idea issue. It's probably more of an execution issue. So I kind of set off on that path of, all right, how do we solve the problem for the folks that do have a good business, right? Proof of concept beyond that. They've got some customers, it sells, the customers like the product, but they haven't been able to get past, when I originally dug into the $1 million market, it seems kind of arbitrary. What is it about a million? But through the podcast and interviewing a bunch of founders, what I found was almost to a person, to a company, that threshold was their network, right? So they started a business. If you have a co-founder, co-owners, they're successful in selling into their network, right? People who know them, know what problem they have. But once they try to break beyond that into either new markets or folks that don't know them is where they plateau. And unfortunately, if they don't figure it out, they end up burning out, running out of money, and never get to that next level. Or on the flip side, it took them 12 to 18 months to try to figure out how to grow. So yeah, so the last couple of years, I've been completely focused on how do I help those companies that want to get there solve this problem.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm excited to dive into your methodology, but before we do that, why are you so convinced that this methodology will work for any company once applied to it?
Yeah, I think part of it is experience, right? I've learned over the years and probably in the bio 30 plus years doing this, and the B2B space has really changed, right? We used to use brute force, cold calling. I mean, I ran a team of 120 outbound cold callers that did
Wow.
nothing but that was 15 years ago, right? The digital world has kind of changed that. And what I've found is coming from a sales and then moving into more of the marketing and demand gen, how to reach people has, fundamentally changed. And the pandemic is basically stopped that transition, said there is a new wave that we're doing this. And maybe just a quick step back, that's part of that. And maybe we'll probably get into it is, a lot of business owners don't realize, or they don't pay attention, or don't have a strategy for the what I would call three different revenue levers, right? There's, acquisition, which is your new logos, new business.
And let's be clear, you're now stepping into the methodology, right? I mean, this is the high level of your methodology, right?
Exactly.
So
And I think,
there's three levers that you can look at when it comes to growth.
exactly. Thank
Awesome.
you for sending me back. But yeah, so, sounds super simple. A-R-N-E, acquisition, retention, and expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found historically is most companies will have a strategy for one, maybe, probably not two, and definitely not three.
Uh-huh.
And when you think about it, acquisition is starting to is new business, new logos, people haven't done with business with you. Expansion is how do you get more money and how do you expand that relationship from your current customers? And then retention is, man, how do we keep them? Right. One of the age old problems is, the boat, right? You're going after new business, you're working really hard, twice as hard, but yet you're churning customers at 50%. So not only do you have to backfill the customers you're losing, then you have to sell more above that. So I found this, it's the acronym's simple, but it's much harder to execute. But I think when you break it in, it's easier then to focus strategies, tactics around each of those areas.
That's awesome. I think that's great. Acquisition, retention, and expansion. So you first meet a client. You get what's your discovery look like? How do you approach a client to find out, where is the plateau? Why is it there? And what needs to be done? What's your process when you first meet a client?
Yeah, I think the first one is, what is your goal, right? Because